Good morning, everyone. Apologies for that. The first issue, of course, is getting yourself unmuted for one of these conventions. Good morning. Delighted to see everybody here today, or as the case may be, not see everyone else. I can't see you. You can all see me, but I can't see you at this moment. But we've got nearly 200 people on the call today, and I just want to welcome every single one of you. Of course, this convention, this 2020 convention, is very different to normal. We were all together in full 3D last year at the QE2, and I do hope next year in 2021 we will be able to also all get together as we normally do for a full day of speakers and discussions about bacta and about our industry. But for 2020, of course, like so many things, we've had to go virtual. And as a result, we've decided to just shorten the convention to half a day as opposed to a full day. You've had the agenda, you know what to expect. We've got a couple of really interesting sessions later on in the morning. We've got an open forum where you'll have an opportunity to speak to both me and the management committee, ask us questions about anything you like. We've had a number of questions come in already, and I'll address those when we get to that point in the time. We'll also have keynote speeches from James Miller, our president, and also from Alex Sobel, the shadow minister for tourism and heritage, who's been a good friend to the industry, and I'm very much looking forward to what he has to say to you. Now, there's a few housekeeping points, of course, that I just want to draw your attention to. If you look at the bottom of your screen, or just hover your cursor, as I'm now doing, over the bottom of your screen, you'll be able to see some buttons there. The one is the raise hand function, and the other is the question and answer function. Now, I don't want you to use the raise hand function if you can possibly resist the temptation to click on it. It is there if for any reason you need to get my attention, and I will see on my screen you just raising your hand, and I will then ask you directly through the medium of Zoom to just say what it is that you need to get my attention for. What I do, and I hope you will be able to do throughout the morning, is ask questions and answers using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Just click on that, type in your question, please put your name as well if you possibly can, and I will see that question appear on my screen and will endeavour to deal with it at the time, or indeed as part of the discussions that we'll be having later. And both the management committee and indeed Alex Sobel will be able to see and hear the questions that you ask. Now, we do have a number of formalities that we have to get to before we get to the open forum and the speech from Alex Sobel. And again, they are very clearly set out on your agenda, a number of elections, of course, and motions to vote on. Now, there is another function you will see when we get to those items on the agenda, that is the polling function. What will happen is a little box will appear on your screen, and it will ask you to vote for or against a particular motion, or indeed abstain. Thank you. I've just had a point from Richard Case to prove that the technology works, saying there is a lot of feedback and echo with my audio. We've now solved that little technical problem. Thank you very much, Richard, for that feedback. So it does work. As I was saying, in terms of the polling feature that you will see, a box will appear on your screen. You simply have to click on for the motion or against the motion, or indeed abstain against the motion. And we will get the results, which we will then share with you. Unlike the US election, we're very happy with the voting technology that we have, and we will be transparently sharing that with you to make sure that you can see that we're not trying to defraud the electorate in any way, shape or form. But it'll all become clear when we get to those points in the morning. As I say, any questions, just type them into the Q&A box, and I'll endeavour to deal with them as we go through the morning. Now, before we start formally, I would just like to show you a short video which we've produced to try to summarise the kind of year we have had. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed that summary of the year, which obviously is only a summary of the many, many things that we've been doing over the past 12 months, which have, in one sense, flown by in what has been the most incredible, difficult and challenging year I think any of us have had to face. It also reminds us that, you know, we are in the serious business of fun, and we haven't forgotten that over the past 12 months. I was delighted with the decision to award those £1,000 grants to local charities around the coast, all nominated by MPs that we know. And it just serves to remind us that however hard it is for us, there are people out there that are having it far, far worse. And I think it says everything that we need to say about our industry, that we were able to find, even in these very dark days, some money to give to those people who have really, really suffered. And I also just want to highlight that very last slide. It's a massive thank you to everyone on this call, and indeed every member who isn't on this call as well. We have done an enormous amount during the past 12 months, but that only happens because we enjoy the support of our membership. All that letter writing, all of those emails, all of those contacts that you've made with MPs and local councillors, Scottish Government, Welsh Government, whoever it happens to be, means that we have achieved things, not everything that we wanted, but we have achieved things this year that we wouldn't otherwise have achieved without that level of support. And from me to you, everyone on this call, everyone not on this call, a massive, massive thank you for your support. So let's now turn to the AGM proper, and we have received a number of apologies. I won't be reading them out to you. We have recorded them and they'll be appearing in the minutes when Teresa gets around to writing them very shortly, and we'll see them, and you'll see them in the minutes when you get them. The first item of business proper is the adoption of the 2019 minutes from our AGM last year. Now, again, just to remind you, what you're going to see on your screen is a poll. You'll be asked to vote for or against for the motion, which is simply to adopt the 2019 AGM minutes. I have a proposer from James Miller and seconded by Greg Wood. And that poll will appear on your screen very, very shortly. You should be able to see that box now, approval of the 2019 AGM minutes. If you could just tick for or against and then submit. Okay, we'll just give it a few moments to run through. Still going. It is, so it's a lot easier to show the hands at the convention on these things. I do apologise, but the technology is very, very good, but not as quick. So we have the results now, I believe, Karen, and you can see the results now on the screen. And I'm pleased to say that we have a 96% approval for those minutes, and I will consider those adopted. And thank you for voting on those. Now, our next item is to adopt the accounts of bacta and its subsidiary entities, as well as the accounts for the bacta Charitable Trust. And I'm now going to invite our treasurer, Chris Haley, to the metaphorical stage, in this case the screen, to take you through the accounts which were circulated earlier this week, highlight some of the issues that you need to be aware of before we move to vote on adoption of the accounts. So it's over to you now, Chris. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, John. Good morning, everyone. I trust the technology is working okay and that you can all hear me. I'm pleased to present to you and discuss the accounts of bacta and its subsidiaries bacta Limited, European Amusement and Gaming Expo Limited, EAG, and bacta Self-Exclusion Services Limited. You've hopefully all received the email with a summary page of the figures and the actual sets of accounts in statutory format. I'm sure I don't need to tell anyone that this has been a very difficult year for all of our businesses, and unfortunately this is also true for bacta, and this will be reflected in the figures that I'm presenting to you today. You've been sent the summary sheet, which shows the combined results of all the bacta entities, and if you look first at the summary balance sheet, you'll see that this shows a decrease in value of £97,000 from last year. This is mainly due to a fall in the value of funds under management, which in the year reduced by £200,000. This reduction has been partially offset by an increase in net assets of circa £100,000. As you can see, the operating loss for the group is £175,000 compared to an operating profit last year of £72,000. This year's loss is primarily due to the need to cancel the EAG exhibition because of the COVID-19 pandemic, along with many landlords had to provide some support to our tenants in Ely Place. Just to put things in perspective, this is still lower than the losses that we incurred in 2017, which were £320,000. And indeed, if EAG had not been cancelled this year, we would have almost broken even. The operating loss this year of £175,000 is comprised of a £385,000 deficit for bacta, a £368,000 profit for bacta Limited, a £150,000 loss for EAG Limited, and a £5,000 loss for bacta Self-Exclusion Services Limited. After exceptional items and taxation are accounted for, the net return deficit for the group was £336,000 compared to a surplus in 2019 of £934,000. I would like to emphasise, having been your treasurer and a member of Mancom for a number of years, that we continually explore opportunities for revenue growth while keeping a grip on costs and striving to obtain value for money for bacta members. If I turn now to the individual entities, looking first at bacta Limited, the combined figures at the operating level before exceptional items show a deficit of £16,000. In 2019, the deficit was £58,000, so this is an improvement over last year of £42,000. The main reasons for the improvement were subscription income was up on 2019 by £88,000. This was primarily due to increased membership in the year, and it was encouraging to see the numbers of new members joining us during the lockdown period. Many members, new and old, have expressed their thanks for the work that the team at bacta have done to help and support them during this very difficult period. Salaries increased in the year by £80,000, but the main factor in this was a transfer in benefits from pension costs to salaries and additional staff costs incurred following staff changes. Other staff costs were up by £53,000, which included redundancy costs incurred in the year and the cost of a temporary employee. The increase in PR costs of £68,000 are due to charges from WE that were allocated to market research in the B2 campaign in 2019, now being incurred for the new Support the Seaside campaign and therefore allocated to PR costs. Market research is lower by £103,000, and this is due to a combination of the previous point and several research projects having been cancelled due to the COVID-19 situation. The overall figure also takes into account an exceptional book loss of £90,000 in funds under management during the period. I think given the exceptionally volatile year that the markets have experienced, this was seen to be a reasonable performance, and since the year end, I'm pleased to say that the funds have recovered. All our fund managers are monitored independently to benchmark their performance against their peers. Taking into account this reduction in the investment funds, together with tax adjustments, bacta and bacta Limited have a net retained deficit of £177,000. If I turn now to bacta Self-Exclusion Services Limited, It retained a loss of £5,000 against a 2019 profit of £27,000. This reduction was due to costs incurred in developing the bacta portal and additional IT support costs. Bacta self-exclusion services was fully supported by without any management charges having been made. Looking at EAG Limited, it's obviously been a very difficult year for EAG. The show in January 20 was, before the pandemic, was obviously a success. However, with the cancellation of the show in 2021, some costs that had been incurred for that show already have had to be written off in these 2020 accounts. The turnover was therefore £895,000, which was a decrease of £92,000 from 2019. The retained loss for this year was £154,000 compared to a profit in 2019 of £79,000. With the cancellation of the 2021 show, it's obviously going to be a difficult year for EAG, but I know that Martin Berlin and the team at Swan Events are busy planning a virtual event in January 21. They're already making big plans for a comeback show in 2022, which I'm sure we'll all welcome and give our support to. Turning to the Bacta Charitable Trust, on Jimmy Thomas's behalf, I'm going to say a few short words on the finances of the Bacta Charitable Trust. I'm pleased to report that even with the devastating restrictions of 2020, this has been a successful year for the Trust. It received donations of £168,000 compared to £45,000 in 2019, and it was able to donate £128,000 to charities compared to £57,000 in 2019. Given the circumstances this year, it's an amazing performance, and the Trust Committee have asked me to pass on their heartfelt appreciation to all those members who organise events and to all those members who have donated so generously. Finally, I would like to express my continued gratitude to Robert Gibbs, Sarah and Tim for their excellent work this year in the Finance Department. Robert Gibbs, I especially want to thank, who has worked incredibly hard under difficult circumstances. Thank you for your patience. I hope you've enjoyed hearing about the financial status of Bacta as much as I've enjoyed delivering it. And I will now hand you back to John. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Not an easy job, Chris, to deliver those accounts virtually, and I hope everyone was able to follow your comments, having had the accounts circulated to you beforehand. I want to also echo your thanks to Rob, Tim and Sarah in the finance team. You know, I've seen up close how difficult it has been, not just to keep Bacta's finances running during the lockdowns and the COVID-19 restrictions, but as I'm sure many of you will have found if you've had recent year ends, the difficulty of actually conducting an audit when you're going to have to do most of that remotely. We haven't had the usual couple of auditors sitting in our office poring over our books as normal. We've had to do all of this remotely, and that's fallen on the shoulders of the finance team. And I personally want to say thank you to all of them, as well as to Chris. One should never forget that the Treasurer's role is actually quite a busy one with Bacta. Chris doesn't just sit there and present the accounts at the AGM. He's daily speaking with Rob, talking through the financial issues that are facing Bacta. And Chris, thank you very much for everything that you've done. And I know that's on behalf of Rob and the team too. So we have now the next poll that I will ask you to vote on. As I said at the beginning, what we're going to do is propose that we adopt all of those accounts en bloc rather than go through them individually. I have a proposer that we do that from, and give us just a little opportunity to get that up on your screen. That poll will appear before you now, and I'll ask you to vote either for or against, or indeed abstain for the adoption of the accounts of Bacta, its subsidiary entities, and the charitable trust for the year ending the 30th of June 2019. So if you could vote now, and we'll give you 30 seconds or so to cast your vote before we share with you the results. Thank you very much. We'll put the results of that on there, and I will highlight the very obvious mistake that I've just noticed. You look at this 1,000 times and you miss it. It's the 30th of June 2020, not 2019. We adopted the 2019 accounts last year. My deep apologies for that. Well, as you can see, 91% voted for, 1% against, and 9% of the members abstained. So that adoption has been passed. Thank you very much for that. And we will now get on with all the necessary signing and filing of those accounts to relevant authorities. Thank you very much. The next item of formal business this morning is the elections of people to the divisions of bacta, division committees of bacta, to the bacta Charitable Trust, the trustees and the treasurer of the association. Now, we circulated all of this before the meeting. You will see that we have got candidates for all of the vacancies that have arisen. If anybody does want to propose anybody, please could you do so as we go through. If you do propose anyone, what will happen is that we will have to redraft the poll, which has been written on the basis of what we've had so far, which may introduce a bit of a delay to the proceedings, and we may have to rewrite the poll and come back to that particular election at the end of this particular section. Before we do that, I've had a question from Gabby, who's asking how many people are on the call. It's just circa 150, Gabby. There's one or two dropping in as we speak. Which is pretty good going for a Zoom call, I think, especially with a number of people on furlough. I'm sure I can't see all of, well, I can see all of you, but I can't run my eye over it just at the moment. But I suspect a number of usual attendees maybe will be on furlough, maybe staff of certain companies that haven't been able to attend. So good to see so many on the call today. So now let's move to the elections. The first of these, excuse me, I'm just moving this up. The first of these is for the bacta Charitable Trust, and we have 6 vacancies for the bacta Charitable Trust, and we've had 6 nominations, which you again have seen in the papers that were circulated beforehand and which will appear on your screen shortly when we put up the poll. You may be surprised to see my name on there. The reason for that is that the bacta Charitable Trust wanted to appoint me as a trustee last year, but we were unable to do so because the trust deed only allowed members of bacta to become trustees of the bacta Charitable Trust. Well, during the course of the year, the trustees have amended the trust deed, which allows any non-member now to become a trustee of the bacta Charitable Trust. And a nomination was received for me, which I'm very, very pleased about, very happy to do, delighted to play my part. So that's why my name is on there. It seems a bit weird that I'm actually conducting an election in which I'm one of the interested parties, but I hope you'll forgive it just for now. And if you could please now vote for, against, or indeed abstain for the motion, which is to elect the following people as trustees of the bacta Charitable Trust: Steve Hawkins, Mark Hallwood, Jonathan Lauder, John Sturgidis Senior, Jimmy Thomas, and myself, John White. Thank you very much. And we'll get the results of that election, which has been conducted en bloc, obviously, in a few moments. There's one or two people who are still thinking very, very hard about this motion. Okay, well, we should put that on your screen now. I'm being told there's still one or two people voting. Right, here we go. There we are, 97% have voted for those 6 people to be elected trustees of the bacta Charitable Trust. So thank you very much, and congratulations to all those involved. Now, we move to the division representatives to the committees. As you know, bacta is made up of divisions, and its division committees are comprised of people that are elected at the AGM for a 3-year term of office, as well as people who are nominated and elected by bacta's regions to sit on the various committees. Now, it's very important that I ask you to only vote for or in the division in which you sit. This is not open to everybody. This is has been very difficult to work out how to manage it, and I think I'm just going to have to rely on you to be honest about which division you rest in at the moment, and vote only for people in your division. And we're going to do this in order, so it'll be 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the first poll is for Division 1. As you saw, and you can see on your screen now, there are 4 candidates who've been nominated for the 4 vacancies on the Division 1 committee for a 3-year term of office. And we've received a proposal from Greg Wood for these 4, and from Neil Finch as seconder for these. So if you could please vote now, that would be great. Remember, only people in Division 1 should be voting in this election. And again, my apologies for the time this takes. We are subject to the speed at which electrons can pass down wires at the moment. As well as the speed in which fingers can press on for and against and abstain. Right, here are the results. 79% have voted for those 4 people to sit on the Division 1 committee for a 3-year term of office. Congratulations to you all. Thank you very much for voting. We're likewise now moving to Division 2. Exactly the same process, please. A poll will appear on your screen. The four people for the Division 2 committee are in front of you now: Greg Wood, Matt Bicknell, Nick Rudd and Peter Davis. We'll elect them en bloc, proposed by Neil Finch and seconded by Quentin Stott. As previously, only members of Division 2, please, voting for these candidates. And there you can see the results in front of you. 69% in favour, none against, and 31 abstentions. So the 4 of you, if you're on the call, have all been elected. Congratulations. And we'll move to Division 3. Similarly, only for members of Division 3, please, to vote on this one. We've had a proposal from Greg Wood, seconded by Quentin Scott, that these 4 gentlemen are elected to the Division 3 committee for a 3-year term of office. Albert Botton, John Sturgidis Senior, Richard Case and William Shipley. So if you could vote again, please, for, against and abstention. Thank you. The results will appear now. There we are. Albert, John, Richard and William have all been elected for a 3-year term of office. Congratulations to you all. And last but not least, we come to Division 4. And again, there'll be a poll on your screen to elect the following 4 individuals for a 3-year term of office. We've had a proposal that we elect these en bloc from Neil Finch, seconded by Trevor Sutton. So please, if you could vote in favour, against or abstain for John Sturgidis Jr., Justin Burke, Paul Taroni and Quentin Stott to sit on the Division 4 committee for a 3-year term of office. Thank you very much indeed. The results of that election are as follows. 67% for, none against, with 33 abstentions. So again, all 4 of you have been elected. If you're on the call, my congratulations to you all. That's for a 3-year term of office. Thank you everyone for bearing with us through those elections. I know that they can be a bit complex from time to time, but that's all gone very, very smoothly. We've still got a couple more to go. The next election is for the Treasurer. I've not received any other nominations than from James Miller, seconded by Greg Wood, for Chris Haley to remain as Treasurer for a 2-year term of office. I'm sure that we will be able to express, oh no, I'm not allowed to say this. I will say thank you to Chris. I won't say any more because it might sound like I'm showing favouritism. If you could please vote for or against, or indeed abstain, for Chris Haley to be elected Treasurer of bacta for another 2 years. Thank you very much. And the results will appear before you very shortly. There we are, Chris, 87 for, 13 abstentions, none against. You are elected treasurer for another 2 years. And I, for one, am absolutely delighted with that result. Thank you very much, everybody, for voting Chris in. And finally, we have to elect the 3 trustees of bacta for a 2-year term of office. The current trustees are Tim Baxter, Jimmy Thomas and Jason Frost. They have been nominated, and it's proposed that they're elected en bloc by James Miller and seconded by Greg Wood. We received no other nominations. So again, could you please vote for, against or abstain for this particular election? Thank you very much. And there you can see the results in front of you, 91% in favour, 1 against, with 8% on the abstention. So congratulations, Tim, Jason and Jimmy. Thank you very much for all the work that you do. Again, people often wonder why we have trustees. Well, the trustees of bacta, given our legal status as a registered employees federation, effectively hold in trust the shares and finances of bacta, and it's a necessary legal part of our constitution. But not only that, the 3 of them provide enormous help and wise counsel to the President and indeed to myself. So thank you, gentlemen. Thank you to everyone else as well who stood and been elected today. My congratulations. We now move to item 4 on the agenda, which again will be another poll, which you'll see shortly. And this is to amend our Code of Conduct and Social Responsibility Charter to include formally the decision that was reached by the Division 1 Emergency General Meeting on the back of a recommendation from National Council that we require members to restrict the use of Category D cash payout fruit machines to persons over the age of 18. I don't want to rehearse all the debates that took place at National Council or at the Division 1 meeting. They were long, complex, passionate, and indeed, let's say, of a very, very high quality. All of the issues were explored, but in the end, it was felt the right thing to do to put this to the Division 1 EGM, which approved it, and then put it to the AGM proper, because it requires an amendment to our Code of Conduct. So if you want to talk about this, we can have an opportunity to do so during the question and answer session with the ManCom in a moment or two. This is more about a formality to adopt what has been proposed by National Council through Division 1 to you, and just to give effect to that particular resolution that you can see in front of you now. So again, if I could just ask you to vote for or against, and indeed abstain if you wish to do so, so that we can then move on to making a formal amendment to our code. Thank you very much. That, by the way, was proposed by Trevor Sutton and seconded by James Miller. My apologies for not saying that before. And there you can see the results in front of you. Thank you very much. 80% in favour, 6% against, with 14 abstentions. So that motion is passed, and we will now update and amend our Code of Conduct and recirculate that to members for your records. So thank you very much indeed. The technology seemed to work okay, and I'm very pleased about that. I can tell you, I can relax slightly now, because that was probably the bit that was worrying me the most about today's virtual convention. Before we close the formal session, I would just like to ask if there was any other business that anyone wanted to raise. As I say, we have a question and answer session. This is not about asking a question of anybody just at the moment. It's whether there was any major issues that we needed to cover off at the AGM that we haven't done so. I don't think there are any. Nobody's been in touch with me beforehand, but I do need to give you the opportunity to say so if you wish. I'm seeing nothing come through on the Q&A screen in front of me. So, okay, I'll assume that there's no other business for the AGM, and we'll move to our open forum. And what's going to happen now is I'm going to bring the management committee onto the metaphorical stage, onto screen. I can tell you, you're just about to see them. They all look very smart and are all wearing bacta ties, as I'm sure every single member of bacta out there is doing too. We will see, appearing very shortly, James Miller, our president, Greg Wood, who is the vice president and chairman of Division 2, Trevor Sutton, chairman of Division 1, Neil Finch, chairman of Division 3, Quentin Scott, chairman of Division 4, and they should all be on your screen now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of host a discussion based upon some of the questions that we've had submitted to us before the AGM. But also, if you want to ask any questions of any one of them, please just type in the Q&A box that you have on your screens that particular question, who you would like to answer, and we'll endeavour to incorporate that in the discussions that take place during the course of the next hour or so. We're expecting Alex Sobel at about 12 o'clock. If we have time, James will do his keynote speech before Alex, but if this discussion is going very well and there's lots of comments coming through, James will do his speech after we've heard from Alex Sobel. So, without further ado, let us move to the first question, which inevitably was to do with COVID-19. And I'm not going to read out the questions that I've had on this. I'm just going to try and incorporate the responses in the discussion that we have. And perhaps I can ask all of you, but maybe start with James, because you've been so close to all of this. Your sense of where we are now in the COVID-19 crisis, your kind of thoughts about what the government's done, what the government's not done, what bacta's done, what bacta's avoided, you know, bullets we've dodged, things that we've not got quite right. It'd be very interesting, James, just to hear your sort of overall thoughts about how it's all gone, and indeed your thoughts about the future.
Well, thank you, John. Good morning, everybody. Crikey, where would you start? It's been one hell of a ride, that's all I can say. I just think that, you know, nobody could foresee what has befallen us. We've done everything possible at every stage to engage with everybody that we can to get our message across. Although it may have seemed frustrating in some parts and events over the summer, we did get reopened, and it was certainly an eventful process. We had a bit of a false start early on, and then we had you know, got a reopened date. And I did recall, John, you know, we got the Friday for about 3:30 on the Friday before we were due to reopen for good. We get an email from DCMS saying the minister is concerned about the rapid recycling of 2p coins on penny falls machines. And you think, my God, this is somewhat testing, but we were there, we were on it, we jumped on it, we reassured them, and we were able to get open. So I certainly don't think we could have done any more than we could, and we're a lot better off than a lot of other sectors that you see have really suffered and lagged behind in some of the approaches, and they haven't been able to get open or had the relationships or the representation that bacta members have had. And that, you know, got us some respite, and we were able, especially the seasonal businesses, were able to make the, you know, that most of the window of opportunity through July and August and into September. But unfortunately, you know, after all these lockdowns, we seem to be back where we started, and we can only put our best foot forward, engage. We argue the point about these tier 3 restrictions, and it is frustrating that other sectors seem to have a different approach with different achievements. But it's certainly not for the want of trying, John. And you know as well as I that we've been very frank with the conversations we've had. Perhaps I've been a bit too frank sometimes, but you've got to get the point across. And we will continue to fight for every member and every member's business.
Thank you, James. And yes, I can confirm that James has been frank. In fact, he's made me wince on a couple of occasions, but I think that's been a good thing. One of the, I suppose, sort of the kind of overarching lessons that I've learned in my career around lobbying is that I can do all the boring stuff because I'm the chief executive, but the passion that comes through from the industry and the people that are working in the industry is actually the thing that almost clinches the deal, because it's genuine, it's based upon real life experience, people's businesses that they love and care about. when they are under threat, obviously comes through in the way they express themselves. And James has been doing that for the past 12 months very, very effectively. Neil, perhaps I can just turn to you, if I may. As Chairman of Division 3, the recent decision by the government to allow bookmakers to open in Tier 3, but AGCs to close, has caused a lot of consternation amongst members in Division 3, clearly because there's competition on the high street. We've often been making the case to governments around the UK that in this particular instance, when it comes to machines, we need to be treated on a level playing field. I just wondered if you had thoughts about why do you think government might see the two types of venue in a different way? Do you think there's things that we need to learn about the way in which the bookies have gone about their lobbying? Any thoughts on that?
Hi, thanks, John. Good morning, everybody. One of the things that this year has definitely taught us that we have kind of known for a while, but unfortunately this year has really kind of brought it to the head, is how kind of little government departments, ministers, local councils really kind of know about our industry, how we operate, and understand what a part we play on the high street. They don't really understand the definition between us and seaside arcades. We've held our kind of, we've been under the umbrella of the seaside for far too long. Now, going forward, I think one of the things that is critical that we must be able to kind of show a difference between family entertainment centres, bookies and AGCs. We really do stand out on the high street. We have exceptional kind of presentation. We run fabulous standards. And by comparison to the way the bookies are looking at the moment, since the reduction in the stake, a lot of the bookies are tired. So for us to be in a position where we are kind of detrimental to the bookies, I think is absolutely terrible. It is an actual shame that there's been no political update scheduled for today's meeting, because we possibly could have asked a few more questions. But I'm hoping that following further discussions that were held last night and discussions with the DCMS in the next couple of days, we may be able to be in a position to state that we can have parity with the bookmakers, i.e. offer a 50% machines available, close at 8 p.m. and have 15 minutes of dwell time. There's no reason at all why the bookmakers can have it and we can't. So do rest assured we are lobbying on that, John, and hopefully we'll have a decision positive within the next few days.
Thank you very much, Neil. And again, I really hear the passion with which you express yourself over these issues. And we've done quite well, actually, I think, during the course of COVID-19 at maintaining a level of parity with various sectors in the various countries, but not always. And it is galling when competitors or similar businesses seem to be treated in a different way. All any business, I think, asks for is fairness and balance, based on evidence and based on logic. And I think that's probably where some of the issues have really irritated me. I mean, for example, and Richard's asked the question on this in relation to Wales, where AGCs in Wales have not benefited from the retail, leisure and hospitality grant. If you recall, we argued very successfully in England that AGCs, alongside certain other gambling venues like bookies, were actually retail and should benefit from the scheme. And the English government, UK government, readily accepted that argument, and that it was a bit of a mistake that we were included in the list of premises that couldn't benefit, changed the law. In Wales, they didn't, and they are sticking their heels in. The latest correspondence from the Welsh government is, we've told you what we're doing, not prepared to talk to you anymore, and if I can be crude without saying so, you can off. Which is, I mean, it's like a red rag to the bull. And I know Richard, who's been working tirelessly down in Wales with the Welsh government to get them to see sense on this and other issues, is absolutely furious about it. And we need to keep on pushing very much on that front. I think it's also, if I may, very interesting to just sort of draw some comparisons across the lobbying front. You know, we would normally, as you said, had have had Interrail here, and I know John Stagides has asked through the question function why they're not. It was just a question of time, to be honest, trying to get a virtual AGM together for a morning rather than a day. But what they will tell you, and I know this because I deal with them on a daily basis, that actually, bacta is actually punching very much above its weight. We haven't got millions and millions of pounds worth of resources. We haven't got hundreds and hundreds of people working for us on public affairs. We've been smart about what we do, and that's actually, given us some really good results during the course of the past 12 months. Not all that we wanted, but given us some good results. But some disappointments, and clearly not opening on the 15th of June, having to wait till July the 4th was one of them. And this latest decision of government not to allow AGCs to open in tier 3 areas is another example of the disappointments that we've had to face. And as Neil said, we are working on that as we speak. Neil won't know this because it's only just this second appeared on my screen as a notification that I've now had a communication back from DCMS, and they've said, please give us a ring for a discussion on the issue. So I'll, as soon as this call is over, this convention is over, we'll get to that, and I'll be back in touch with Neil and other members in Division 3 to discuss. Could I perhaps just turn to you, maybe Quentin, Chris, Greg, whoever, your thoughts about the future? I mean, we've talked a bit about the past and where we've got to. With the vaccines coming along, there is some light at the end of the tunnel, but it still looks like we're going to have to go through a very, very difficult winter. You, Trevor, any thoughts? Maybe if I could come to you first, Quentin.
Yeah, morning, everybody. Well, hopefully we're nearer to the end of this pandemic than we are to the beginning. So the light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccines, we all are hoping come through. And, I read that the 50s and over should hopefully be vaccinated by the end of February. And if we can get to that point, hopefully the economy can start moving to some degree again. What I would say is that it's been terrible for every sector of bacta so far. And being in Division 4 and manufacturing machines, we haven't sold a machine since the middle of March. And I listened to my colleagues on Division 4, we're talking about EAG, which I'm sure we'll come to later on. It's going to be a really long, drawn-out process before we get any sort of revenue again in Division 4. I mean, we've got to wait for Divisions 1, 2, and 3 really to kick in with their customers, get some income before we can get selling again. So, from a bacta point of view, I think as long as we as well can keep lobbying hard for the government support for things like the furlough scheme that has already been extended to the end of March, it may need to be a little longer than that for some of us. So yeah, we've all got our things to contend with, but Division 4, even with the reopening of certain venues, there's been very little by way of sales in that period.
Yeah, it's a shocking situation for our manufacturers and distributors, and also for our Division 2 members who very similarly have not received any support whatsoever under any of the schemes other than the national schemes during the course of this crisis, having been equally badly affected as their customers. And that's just wrong. And one of the refrains that we, amongst others, have been saying since the very beginning of this is that you have got to remember the supply chain in all of this, because if you don't, it won't be there when the recovery comes, whether it's Easter, whether it's the summer. And without supply chains, businesses won't succeed. They won't recover, and you're prolonging the agony, the economic agony of the country. Before I come to Chris and Greg to talk about Division 2, and that pain, by the way, operates in England, Scotland and Wales. The Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, has just started to announce the tier levels, I understand. Somebody has very kindly tweeted that Liverpool is put in a question and answer session that Liverpool is in tier 2. So he must be up setting out the tiers now as we speak. And we will send those all out to members later on today so that you can see where you are, if not before. So Chris and Greg, from a Division 2 perspective, what are your thoughts about COVID-19 and what we can expect for the future?
Yeah, shall I go first? It's been appalling. It's been absolutely dreadful. Right from the very beginning, when there was the first lockdown, given very little notice of it. From a logistics point of view, I run a national company. to try and organise collections at very short notice to deal with the pub codes to satisfy their demands, it was an absolute nightmare. We had to pull out all the stops to get it done. We did do it, but we had to secure the machines. Once we came out of that, you know, lots of those machines had been stood for a while, so we were out of order, etc. Needed service calls to re-engage them. It was very difficult. Without the furlough scheme, which is the only support we've had, you know, we managed to maintain employment for many people. But I've spent the last 26 years building up Dransfields, and it's been pretty heartbreaking to watch it being destroyed to no fault of our own. You know, over 10% of my staff have had to be made redundant. That's heartbreaking for me as an MD who's been passionately trying to grow the company. And then the government, the way that they're just decimating hospitality. They're making them a scapegoat. All the figures that are coming out regarding infection rates, it's not happening in hospitality. It's happening in supermarkets. It's happening in retail. It's not happening in hospitality. And yet hospitality is bearing the brunt of the restrictions. Without hospitality, there is no machine supply. And even when they do reopen, local councils interpret the rules however they see fit. And I do want to express my thank you to Brad at Bacta, because every time I've fired a council at him for doing some crazy rules and trying to close his customers down, he has responded by going to the council and setting them right, and we've been able to fight their stupidity. But there's been no support for us in Division 2 whatsoever, other than the furlough. And it's been dreadful, and I've had a conversation with Greg, and I know he feels the same. You've only got to look today at the losses that have been announced by Mitchell and Butler, by Fuller's, at the numbers of job losses. That's before this second lockdown even kicked in. We've got to get through winter. If pubs and clubs are in Tier 3, they're closed. If they're in Tier 2, it's only if they can serve food effectively or some outdoor space. That's the majority of our customers effectively closed. You do not get working men's clubs serving substantial meals, an odd one or two, pie and peas or whatever, but it's not something they do. So they are effectively closed. But because we're a national company with all these different tiers, I'm going to have a head office function to manage those bits of the country that are open. I've also got to deal with the devolved government. So at the minute, I'm having to provide support to our Wales operation, which is, you know, is small comparatively. Heaven help, the Scottish operators have barely been allowed to be open this year. Our Scottish operation has suffered greatly. And I just do not see the logic. It defies all logic. And Johnson is, I think everybody knows my views on him, but hospitality is being made a scapegoat, and I think it's outrageous.
Yeah. No,
yeah.
thank you, Chris.
Curfew, at least that has gone. That's about the only bright spot.
I can almost hear all the members on the call clapping very, very loudly in response to those comments. Greg, I don't know if there's anything you can really add to that. I mean, this situation has been absolutely dreadful for Division 2.
It has, and I mean, you've got to bear in mind that some of the operators still haven't opened. I mean, the likes of Deltic, the biggest nightclub operator in the country, has not been able to open at all. You know, and yeah, they haven't got a lot of fruit machines in that state, but you know, still it's hospitality, it provides jobs, and it's all going to have an impact on the economy as we restart. And I think, you know, pivoting the question towards the future, the more pubs that go out of business and the more pubs that don't reopen, the harder it's going to be for us to restart the business and get back up to our pre-COVID levels, which is where we can then start investing in new machines. Because if we can't get there, and we lose 20, 30, 40% of the supply that we had, then that's going to have a big impact on the manufacturers. And because, you know, we're going to have stock that's sitting around, we're just going to reuse that, and that could take months, years before we even get anywhere. So the hospitality sector does need to be given the ability to reopen. In, you know, looking at the new restrictions in Tier 2, there's going to be a lot of pubs that just don't open. You know, they're just not going to open. Even if they've got kitchens, they probably won't open. Where they have got kitchens, they're going to see a huge drop in trade. So it's a big issue, and I do think we need to put a lot more effort on the Tier 2, current Tier 2 restrictions for pubs and hospitality, and see what lobbying efforts we can put in around that. to maybe make some changes around how we can deal with that. So yeah, they're my views. I mean, my sentiments are the same as Chris's across the board. You know, as we came into the lockdown and the timings and the support, it's not been good enough. You know, the furlough scheme has helped invaluably, but it's not enough to keep the businesses moving along and have them ready to restart when they need to.
Yeah, thank you very much, Greg. I'm just going to keep the conversation going on this for a little bit longer on COVID, and we've got plenty of other topics to discuss. And I think what we'll do, James, if you don't mind, is probably run this up to 12 when we're expecting Alex Sobel to join us, and then you can do your speech after Alex and close the conference then. So maybe I could just ask Trevor to offer a few views from the perspective of Division 1. Clearly, as a seasonal business, we had to work very, very hard during the early part of the year to get the point across that you know, seasonal businesses are seasonal businesses, and being closed during your season is essentially being closed for 18 months. How are you seeing it now, Trevor?
Yeah, I mean, I concur with everything that's been said so far, and particularly what Quent said. I think recovery will be, whilst there's light at the end of the tunnel, I think recovery will be slow. I think one of the biggest problems you've got, and particularly with those seasonal businesses, that from a CapEx perspective, many of the operators on this call simply won't be spending money anytime soon. They'll be going into self-protect mode. You know, they need to survive, ultimately. And I think that's the key objective, really, for pretty much everybody on the call right now. You know, what's happened over the last 10, 11 months is just incredible. It couldn't have been foreseen. That's a given. And you know, I think you started the panel session by perhaps discussing what the government had potentially done wrong and what mistakes they've made. Well, quite frankly, John, we haven't got long enough, in all honesty. We'd be here for a very, very long time discussing that. And even the most recent announcements, and you've rightly said, I think Matt Hancock's now making his announcements. Everybody right now is on tenterhooks as to what tier they're going to be in. You know, everybody wants to, or most want to avoid tier 3. In tier 3, many of our locations will be closed. That's a given, and it's an absolute travesty that there are you know, other operations out there, such as the LBOs, the betting offices, that are allowed to continue trading. It's just farcical. There's been some relief. CGRS was obviously massive for the entire industry and across all sectors. But on its own, it's just not enough. All that's doing is allowing us to survive in the short term. What are we going to do about the long term? In terms of the future, yeah, the recovery will be slow. But what I think this has taught everybody is really, you know, in fact, this particular conference now, the fact that we're on a convention on a Zoom call with in excess of 140 people, technology. So, you know, I remember vividly sitting at a conference at the convention 2 years ago, and I think we had an open debate about the future of FECs. You know, how do we adapt? How do we adapt? How do our sector of the industry adapt and take things forward? Well, technology is the key. But again, with that comes investment. You know, and for the purse strings to be released, we need more support. And again, one of the things I think a big miss by the government is accepted that in some areas of hospitality, the cut to 5% in VAT was appreciated and welcomed, but it wasn't expensive enough. It didn't go far enough. You know, bowling centres is a good example. You know, it doesn't apply to bowling, and it absolutely should. A reduction in MGD, something that we're actively lobbying for, and we'll continue to lobby for. We need more. I think is the summary. But technology moving forward will play a big part in that recovery, I'm sure.
Agreed. Thank you very much, Trevor. And again, I think everybody's nodding their heads in response to your comments there. I certainly am. And yeah, just to remind members, you know, we're not sitting here thinking, oh, well, you know, this is the end of the road. The lobbying goes on. And again, please write those letters to your MPs and to your councillors on any of the issues that we ask you to write on. I know there's a bit of fatigue. I've certainly got writer's cramp from writing letters or typing letters to anybody I can think of. But it really does matter. That momentum, that noise, as Jason Foster so eloquently put it to me earlier in the year, you know, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So we have to make as much noise as we possibly can to as many people as we possibly can if we're going to get the attention we need. And we will keep on pushing. We want 5% VAT rate for the seaside. We want 5% rate for the high street of MGD, and we want rates relief for 2021-22, and we're saying this to all of the governments of the United Kingdom at the moment. And maybe just by way of conclusion on COVID-19, I thought there's a couple of points that I think from my perspective I've picked up on. I think one is devolution. I'm generally a fan of devolution. I think, you know, decisions should be taken at the appropriate level within government, and I mean that from almost your parish council up to the national UK government. Whether the powers are right or wrong for each level is another debate, but in principle I generally support it. But my faith has been weakened considerably through the course of the past 12 months. You know, this virus doesn't recognise Hadrian's Wall or Offa's Dyke. You know, it absolutely affects every single one of us in exactly the same way. There may be regional variations, there may be differences in Scotland and within Scotland, and in England and within England, and in Wales and within Wales. But actually, the response to them doesn't have a Scottish dimension or an English dimension or a Welsh dimension. And it's felt that what's happened is that Scottish and Welsh governments in particular, because they have powers that they can exercise, have just said, well, I'm going to exercise them. It's almost, and I wouldn't say this is actually the motivation, but it's almost like you've got somebody going, well, I'm just going to be different for the sake of it. I mean, and the complexity that has introduced into our business lives has been totally unwarranted. And I'm not sure it justifies in any way, shape or form the public health response either, which frankly is the same wherever you sit. We're still having to deal with it. So I think, you know, from that point of view, I think that's got to be a lesson learned in the many, many months to come when we sit down and analyse this. And the other thing that I've got very passionate about, and I think has been the biggest failure of governments, is probably governments around the world, actually. I don't know, I haven't got enough knowledge, but in the UK, a bit of a knee-jerk reaction, I think, to the pandemic. And I won't talk about the public health side of it. There's many views on that. But the way in which they've dealt with business has been, there's been some good engagement, I have to say. You know, we deal with the CBI, we're members of the CBI, and I've seen and heard and participated in numerous conversations with senior politicians who have been open and willing to listen to business. That's true. But they've not understood the fundamentals for me of the response that we needed, which was not to be sectoral, not picking industries which can open and picking industries which can remain closed. Again, the virus doesn't understand that. What it understands is, can I pass myself on to some other human being? How can I do that? Through surfaces or through aerosol transmission. So if you, as a business, can make your premises safe, you are participating responsibly and actively in minimising that transmission. It doesn't matter what sector you're in. There'll be people that do it well and they should be open, and there are people that won't be bothered to do it or doing badly and should be closed. I don't care whether you're a pub or you're, you know, Go Ape. It really doesn't matter. If you're doing what's necessary to reduce that risk of transmission to the lowest possible level, you should be open. And if we'd taken that approach, the economy wouldn't be as up as the Chancellor told us yesterday, in my view. So anyway, that's a bit of a personal opinion. You may or may not agree with me, but I think I'm right, and I'm going to stick to it. Let's move on. We'll move away from COVID, guys, if we may. I'd just like to perhaps pick up the EAG. We obviously, as Chris has said in his discussion of the accounts, had to cancel EAG 2021, and working with Martin and Karen and the team there, we put together a package for Division 4 operators, manufacturers and distributors that we hope will give you an opportunity to showcase your products. But I just wondered, again, Quentin, you're clearly going to be an exhibitor there. I just wondered what your hopes were for a virtual event as opposed to our usual real event.
I guess the first hope is one of businesses opening well in advance of the show, albeit virtual. It'd be nice if the land-based businesses are back and taking money, and people are attending with some normality about their businesses rather than being in a phase of lockdown. But we've got to embrace this new way of doing things. I hope we're all back in 2022 and seeing each other face to face. But if that's not possible right now, then I think we've just got to embrace the opportunity. I think Karen and the team at EAG will do everything they can to make it a success. I think as Division 4 members, manufacturers and distributors, if we all turn up there and do our bit, hopefully people will come. I think it's an opportunity to re-engage with people. I don't quite know how it's going to work with sort of the ambient people walking around and just sort of coming across your stand and having a chat, but we will certainly be looking to set appointments with our customers and have some time with them to show them specific products or games that are relevant for us and them. So yeah, we're just going to have to go at it with eyes wide open and with a positive attitude, and see what comes of it. It'll be a first for all of us.
Thanks, Greg. Neil, Trevor, Greg, I'm just going to ask you, what are you hoping to see? I mean, you'll be there looking at machines for your businesses. So what do you hope you'll see? Greg, just start with you first, if I may.
I think, as Quentin said, it's going to be a good opportunity to engage and catch up with people and view what developments have been done, if any, by the manufacturers during the lockdown and the periods that we've been open. I think it's a good opportunity to plan how we're going to move forward. Once, hopefully in January, we'll have a better idea of where we're going and when we may see restrictions lifted, which will give us some opportunity to look at how we could invest if we do see some recovery coming through into January. But I think in general, it's something that we really need to do. It's positive. I think it's brilliant the way that Martin and Karen have managed to turn this around in the speed that they have, engage with the exhibitors and get it together. I think it's been a really, really good effort.
Trevor, what are you hoping to see?
Well, look, I've already given my views on the recovery, but I think you've got two options here. You stand still and do nothing, or you move forward. And we've already seen some examples of virtual shows elsewhere. I think it's absolutely the right decision. The fact that capital expenditure has been reduced to pretty much nothing at the minute doesn't mean that we're still not looking to invest and looking at new innovative ways of bringing what our audience craves. We still need to supply innovative product to our customers ultimately. So when the customers come back, we need to be ready. It's a chance to engage with manufacturers and distributors, and ultimately that's been lacking really over the last few months, and we need to re-engage. So I think it's crucial that we do it. It's crucial that we get great attendance, and I've just reaffirm what Greg's just said. Credit to Martin, Karen, and the guys, because they've really done extremely well pulling this out of the bag, and I for one will most definitely be attending and engaging as best I can in the process.
Thank you very much, Trevor. And Neil, you're going to be there.
And I certainly am, John. One of the things that I think it's important to kind of realise and to make everybody aware is the position that we're in at the moment with regards to kind of manufacturing and distribution is good. The quality of the machines, the content, the games over the last few years, and particularly this year that is coming through, is exceptional. We're up there with kind of what's out there in the rest of Europe, and kind of, by comparison to some of the games and content that's often in places like Vegas, we are there. We produce good games, and from the manufacturers and distributors' point of view, one of the things that has started to come out, or particularly to me, over the last couple of months, is they're keen for us to invest in new machines. They're offering very good payment terms, with extended kind of long-term leases with the capital payment at the end. They've been very supportive during the period of lockdown, where they kind of they've not charged us for content and tried to help us to get through this. And so by having this kind of virtual EAG, it is important that we all support it. We get behind it. We kind of, we deal with our manufacturers and distributors. And yes, it's going to be difficult. We don't have lots of money to kind of invest in new equipment, because we're also paying for, shall we say, our outstanding bills over the initial lockdown. But I think if we can kind of take on new equipment, which is which I'm guessing is going to be exceptional, on kind of extended payment terms, at least it gives them a chance to continue to operate and to produce, you know, the equipment that we need going forward. Because hopefully, you know, once we do get past this, you know, theoretically, as was announced yesterday by one of the health advisors from Sage, theoretically, if we're all vaccinated by kind of springtime, Easter should be fantastic. Particularly for the FEC side and the sector as a whole, because people really will want to get out and spend and enjoy themselves. So we've got to ensure that we support the manufacturers, distributors, and have the product that the customer wants to play.
Thank you, Neil. I mean, it's very, very pertinent comments, and I think, like you, that there is an enormous amount of pent-up demand. So when we do get open, then we could see some really good numbers through our cash boxes. Our task now is to make sure that we're all there when we get to that particular point in time. I'm going to move on now, if I may. We've had, as I've said, a number of questions coming in and a number beforehand, and just speak very briefly about the Gambling Act, if I may. I think everybody knows this. James and I were on a call with the Secretary of State last week, where he gave the strongest indication yet that the gambling review would be launched in the early part of December. So, you know, kind of any day this week, next week, or the week after, I guess. We also know that it's going to be quite a longish process. We were told that, and this was before the meeting last week, but we were told there would be a 4-month call for evidence, which is unusually long for calls for evidence, then a consultation period, and then obviously decisions would be taken by government as to what to do. But one of the questions that came in beforehand from Byron Evans was, what are our top 5? And James, I think I perhaps better come to you first as president. What would be your top 5? And maybe not bactas, because that's got to be determined by National Council. But what would your top 5 asks be if you had a free hand going into a gambling review?
Crikey, I think it's going to be. I think we'll have to look at this practically. I think that the general consensus from the feedback we've had, John, is going to be a fairly constrictive review in regards of advertising, media and online and all of those sort of things, but we can't let that overshadow our wants and asks. I think we need to look at the triennial review, reinstating the triennial review. I think there has to be some sort of flexibility in any future legislation, so we're not constrained in the future. That's got to be one of the key things. We always say this phrase that it's the analog act for the digital age. Anything they develop needs to be able to move with the times, so that we can engage with the government departments and the Gambling Commission on the likes of cashless payments, for example, and not have to go back through legislation. And this should be done on a case-by-case basis. So I think there's a couple there. I think stakes and prizes have to be looked at in line with inflation and what we can do. Machine numbers is another key factor for many people. What to do with the 80-20 rule and the confusion over tablets. And I mean, there's just a few, John. It's just we've talked so many things, and we've just got to be clear going forward. And we've got to get all the members' input in what we feel under the circumstances. I think the key thing is to remember times have changed from the last act, and we're in different circumstances, and we are not of those times, and the world has moved on, and we need to be able to move with it.
Thanks, James. Very, very wise words. And I'd certainly echo what James has just said there. If any members have any views as to what should be going into the Act, we haven't yet got our settled position. We've got a kind of 90% settled position because we've taken it through the division committees and the regions over the course of the autumn. But the world moves very quickly, and we won't really sign off probably until the day before the deadline on the call for evidence sometime in the new year, so that we can take account of everything that's happened during the course of the winter months. Maybe I could just turn to you, Greg and Chris, actually, with sort of Division 2 perspective, and perhaps sort of wrap this up with another question that came through before today about the recovery and what actually you really would like to see as the kind of top priorities for Division 2, for operators. What are bacta going to do to really address the single site operators in pubs and clubs who clearly have had such a tough time over the course of the past 8, 9, 10 months. And perhaps you can, in your answers, Greg, just to maybe pick up on GPT, and I'll bring you in, Quentin, obviously, because you've been involved in that, because that's clearly one of the things that bacta's been working on for the benefit of Division 2.
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, payment methods has been an ask at the top of the list for Division 2 for quite some time. And I think it's an essential move for our part of the market to be able to take non-cash payments, which we now have the technology to do. I know Chris and I have got quite a few machines out there with the GPT system on, which is obviously mostly bacta owned, and it's going very well. So I think that is a big positive, you know, and as James mentioned, the review is going to be very restrictive, and I don't think we're going to get a lot. But two of the things that we need to focus on in Division 2, which also is covered off with the app, are the fact that we can now age verify people very easily, and we can provide social responsibility tools, which are very hard for us to do in Division 2, as we have no control over the environment that our machines are in. So having this app allows us to provide those facilities to our customers and the players, which I think hopefully will help us in the act. I'm not convinced that we'll get much, but no, I think GPT is going to offer us something that we can work on, and it's going very well. I think just to give a brief update as to where we are. I mean, we've had 300 downloads of the app. We've got about 170 active users. This was obviously pre-lockdown, and the 90 machines are live on the system as we speak. So I think that there's often more than one machine in a location. So the number of locations they're in is less than 90. So I think the number of downloads we've had has been very good based on that. And we've only had a few months of trading. So we were about to launch with some test sites just prior to the first lockdown. I think Chris managed to get one machine out there, or two machines, and that was it until we came out of lockdown in July. So we've gone from the beginning of July having one machine out there to 90 before we then got locked down again, which I think has been a very, very good push. And bearing in mind that the manufacturers also have had limited time to integrate. I think Reflex are fully integrated now. There's a few other smaller manufacturers that have done it, and Blueprint are just on the cusp. I think they are about to begin some live site testing quite soon. So that is a good positive on that front.
To hear. Good to hear. Good. Quentin, I mean, any other thoughts on GPT before I come to you, Chris, just to talk about potential changes to the Act you'd like to see?
Okay, John, yeah, thoughts are that we've had an extremely challenging year to try and get this rolled out, but as Greg said, 90 machines, over 11 operators from lockdown to shutdown, and everything was working well. I mean, one of the great things is some of the data capture, as well as the SR measures that we've got in place, and also the ability to expand it from not just Division 2 now, but, you know, there's the FEC version we're looking at doing the software only version, which will help some manufacturers integrate better and more in their sweet spot of what they're looking for. So the potential for this is huge, and ultimately, of course, as well as it being a commercial success for GPT, to be a revenue generator for bacta ultimately is what everybody on the board is trying to achieve with it. And we've got the foundations in place now. I think what we just need is a little bit of normality to be able to roll it out to others and you know, measure even further the success of what contactless payment or non-cash payments can do for our sector.
Thank you, Quentin, very much. So, Chris, can I just ask you, maybe not to talk necessarily about GPT, but maybe some other thoughts you've had about things you'd like to see in the Gambling Act that would be particularly useful for Division 2 members?
Yeah, sure. Just a quick one on GPT. We were doing really well, and then every time we get some momentum, the government shuts us down again. It's so frustrating. You know, the feedback on it has been so good, and we get the word of mouth, and people start talking about it, and then bang, it shuts down again. So We will keep plodding on. In terms of the wider act, certainly think that we need to reinstate a regular review of stakes and prizes. I know we used to have it as a triennial, whether it's every 3 years or not, but certainly to have some certainty so that we can all plan around as businesses, and it certainly helps on the manufacturing cycle. I would like to see it become much more of a risk-based approach in the way that the Gambling Commission deal with us. It's so bureaucratic, it's so headmasterly, so I would like to see a change in tone from any like replacement of the Gambling Commission or tweaking the Gambling Commission. Certain bits of bureaucracy that just don't make sense, like pubs are automatically allowed 2 machines, yet we have to go through a procedure of notifying the local council. It's just red tape for red tape's sake. So yeah, reducing bureaucracy is a good one. And then age verification, etc., that Greg touched upon. As operators, we are not in control of the machines once they are within the venue. And it's frustrating sometimes that we are taking the blame for events beyond our control. So I'd like to see some recognition of that. So yeah, reducing bureaucracy and more of a risk-based approach would be my key asks, along with a reinstated review of stakes and prizes.
Thank you very much. Our guest speaker, Alex Sobel, has arrived, so we'll be coming to him very, very shortly. But there's a couple of questions I do want to try and squeeze in, if I may. Trevor and Neil, if you could just very quickly, if you can, almost just give us a list of your top priorities for the Gambling Act before I just pick up on sort of Brexit and trade issues to conclude this question and answer session. Trevor.
If I kick off with Div 1, you know, I'm fairly pragmatic about it. For me, actually, it's more about, especially with the year we've just gone through and the pressure we've been under with the recent changes in code of conduct, it's absolutely to protect what we've got. That, for me, is the top priority as an FEC operator. Let's not lose anything from the Act, because a gambling review can form many things, and the last thing we want is extra legislation in terms of the products that we actually operate. So I'm normally a half full kind of guy, and this may sound a bit negative, but it absolutely isn't intended to be. Ultimately, we must protect what we've got. And you know, I concur with what's been said about the stakes and prizes triennial. That's been a battle we've been having for the best part of a decade now, isn't it? Getting that on the table and actually having a triennial review. It's long since gone. So yeah, a review of stakes and prizes would be certainly high on the list. But initially, protect every part of the FEC sector and ensure we don't lose anything within that gambling review would be my top priority.
Thank you very much, Trevor. And finally, Neil, your list.
Well, it's always a wish list. One of the things, obviously, I take into account all the hard work that has been done regards to the cashless app. But one of the things that we should be kind of looking for is to have cashless payment, i.e. not credit cards, but at least the use of debit cards. You know, we mustn't lose sight of that. That is one of the important asks that we do need. With relation to stakes and prizes, I don't think, we don't need 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 jackpots on the high street. You know, leave that to the casinos and online. That is their forte. What I think we do need is kind of linked jackpots with machines within kind of certain premises. On the ADC side, you know, obviously we need to kind of get away from this 20% rule, because let's let the market dictate. You know, you're not going to put 40, 50 B3 machines in one small kind of town centre location if there's no requirement to do so. You know, we're not going to spend money where we don't need to. But, you know, we need to be able to be in a situation where we've got more than 20% of our machines as B3. I have been in a position, and I'm sure other similar operators have been in a position where you have more customers wanting to play B3s than you have actually on your premises. You know, so let's let the market dictate rather than somebody dictate down to us who has no idea of what customers do or do not want. Thank you.
Appreciate all of your comments on that. As I say, Alex is here, and we'll turn to Alex in a very few minutes. But I did just want to pick up one final point, because we have had a question on it, and it's about the tariffs. probably just ask about the tariffs rather than Brexit, because like many people, I'm just sitting here with bated breath to see whether we actually get a deal or not on Brexit. But many members will know, but some won't, that last week we woke up to the news that the European Union had slapped a 25% tariff on US imports of certain amusement machines and equipment and spare parts. And we're currently working very, very hard on that with both our American colleagues and our European colleagues. The reason is that it all got wrapped up with a dispute between the EU and the US over subsidies for aircraft manufacturers. And you may have picked up on some of that over the years in the national newspapers. It's crazy. It's just crazy that somehow we're a piece of collateral damage in a trade dispute about a sector and an industry that absolutely has nothing to do with us whatsoever. What is the likely outcome of this? Well, it's hard to say. These things are pretty well fixed, and we may just be subject to the greater currents and eddies of trade negotiations. But all I can say is that we're getting to the right people as we speak to make our case, really to encourage the dispute to be resolved and therefore take the problem away, not just for us, but there are other things affected, like fresh fish, believe it or not, certain other bits of the creative industries. It's a long, long list of impacted sectors. Hopefully that we can encourage the dispute to be resolved. And the news from, or the view from America is that with the Biden administration, that is much more likely to happen than under the current Trump administration. And clearly from our European side, we need to speak with DG Trade, and we'll do that through Euromat. In the UK, I'm still trying to establish, and there's different views on this, whether or not the tariff will apply post January the 1st. My understanding is that in general, these sorts of things all fall down when we get to the 31st of December, and it's a brave new world as of the 1st of January. But I'm also being told in this particular case, because it's part of a trade dispute where we support the EU, it is likely that those tariffs will remain in place. But the people that are involved in that, I am communicating with you directly. If there's anybody who's not heard from me on this directly by email, please drop me a note and I'll make sure you're part of the group. So unless any member of the panel wants to offer some final thoughts, I'll move to Alex. Anybody want to say anything? And I've had no further questions come through. Oh, hang on, I have had just one. Okay, well, that's a question for Alex, so I will save that for Alex, John, if you don't mind. It's only really left for me to thank the management committee. Like James, their term of office will be coming to an end in February and March next year. This gives me an opportunity, and I will do so again later, to thank you enormously for all the support that you've given me. But for the members, you need to understand just how much time and dedication these guys give to this organisation. Helping steer us, making decisions, getting involved in so much between the regular ManCom meetings that we have, and it really is good to have this team on board. So thank you very much. Thank you for this morning. We're now going to move to our keynote speaker, Alex Sobel. Alex has been a really good friend of ours over the past 12 months when we've really got to know him. James and I have had a number of conversations with Alex around all of the issues that we've had to deal with. He knows the seaside well. You know, we're speaking about trips to the Yorkshire and Lincolnshire coast with his family during some of those conversations, and I'd like to think that he gets us as an industry. But Alex is going to speak now for you know, sort of roughly 15-20 minutes, give us a few thoughts about the way the world is at the moment, but has very kindly agreed to stay with us for a lot longer than that if there are a number of questions that pop up from members during the course of his speech. So if you would please, as I've said always along, just type your questions in the question and answers box using the function at the bottom of your screen. I can see them, I will pick them up, and I will put them to Alex when we get to the end of